So it's been a heavy start to 2021. The runoff election, the riot on the Capitol, the impeachment hearings. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. And I know that I've been exhausted the whole time. And I've talked to other people, they're exhausted because there's never a moment that you get to take off. And I know we've been talking a little bit about this on the program in the intros. And I bring this up today because in the course of today's discussion with Simon, we talk about his first book, Let Not the Waves of the Sea, which is about his brother and his brother's girlfriend who were both killed in the tsunami in Thailand in 2004. Simon was in medical school at the time, and a large part of this discussion that you're going to hear today is about this back and forth between wanting to be a writer and doing this work in medical school. And he eventually leaves medical school to go to Thailand after his brother is killed, and he doesn't really know why. He just wants to be there, and he's trying to figure out ways to do something, and he doesn't know what to do, and he sort of realizes that people don't really need him there because the authorities on the ground have things covered. But this is an experience that he goes through, and he stays down there for a while, and I don't want to spoil the whole interview, but at a certain point, he doesn't mean to write this book, but the book emerges from this grief and this trauma. And that is what frees him to begin reestablishing his writing career and leaving medicine and doing this vocation that he wants to do, which is be a writer. And it's so profound, and I was so touched by the conversation, but I also felt it very deeply. If you've listened to the program, you've heard me, both in intros and through the interviews, talk about being in trauma therapy and the importance of that for me to clear things out of my past or begin to at least come to grips with them and try to face both that trauma and the ways in which that trauma was then expressed by me out into the world. And it's so important for us to talk about these things now because as I watched the riot happen on the Capitol, when I had to turn it off, the anger and vitriol that I saw there, the absolute lack of humanity in the faces of the people who were storming the Capitol, who were beating cops, who were looking for blood. And I know this is a very simplistic way to look at this, but all I could think of was these are people that have deep pain and trauma and have no idea how to deal with it. And one of the things that we know, particularly in white men, is that if we don't figure out ways, and by we I mean other white men helping those white men, if we don't figure out ways to help them both understand that it's okay to look at your trauma and have it and acknowledge it and seek help for that, it's going to come out in these other ways. And this is not an excuse. This is not trying to say like, oh, poor them. Not at all. Everybody has choices to make, right? The things in my life I had choices to make, and the fact that I didn't get therapy for as long as I did mean my life unfolded the way that it did. And we can certainly look at patriarchal structures and say, yes, it also impacts me. All of that's true. But when you're at the sort of top of the asshole food chain, it is so important for you to be the one that's making the step to fix that. You can't have other people making you fix that. That's not how it works. And so re-listening to my conversation with Simon today, at a certain point, and I posted this on Instagram, so you can go see the whole quote there, or you can just listen to the interview and you'll hear it. At one point he says basically, I started writing about this trauma and didn't really mean to publish it, and then realized that it was an exorcism of sorts, that he needed to process through that trauma before he could write other things, right? Like he couldn't get to the writing part of his life until he processed through writing this other trauma that had happened. And that just struck me so deeply and personally because, I've mentioned on the show before, which I'm going to say a million times during this intro, that my therapist flat out told me if it wasn't for writing, she was pretty sure I would have killed myself, to which I have always said that's 100% true because I know the precipices that I have been upon and I know what got me out of them. And it was the ability to process through emotion, even though I didn't know that's what it was happening, by putting it somewhere else. And in my deepest, darkest moments, being able to process through what was happening so that it, one, didn't spill out on the world, and two, didn't get focused on, me, and that it was on the page. And it was through that got me into therapy, where I could then begin to do the work. Because as Allison Wood said on the program, months ago, when she was talking about her memoir, writing a book isn't therapy. It's not therapeutic. Therapy is therapy. But sometimes you have to get that first story out so you can get to that other place. And I just thought that was so profound. Listening to his interview today, you're going to hear, as always, lots of laughing, gallows humor, us sort of, laughing at things that may feel like things that you shouldn't be laughing at. But it's because we are in this place where we're on the other side of this thing. And when you get to the other side, and all of you know this, everybody out there listening has gotten through the other side of something and has looked back and just thought, I don't know how I got through that. And then you see what other people go through, and it's, there but for the grace of God go I. And you can recognize that trauma in other people because you've been through that barrier. And so the events of the beginning of 2021 and re-listening to this thing with Simon, I've just once again been reminded of the power of having a place to put this trauma and to put the feelings and to put the things that we go through in a place, not to fix them, but so that you can go get the help that you need. And whatever that looks like. For me, it's therapy. And out of that, I'm now sort of in that sort of post-trauma healing phase of things where I'm trying to get back to writing. I'm trying to get where Simon is now, which is the ability to now delve back into himself and write. And I don't mean to connect it to the Capitol because there's so many fucked up things about that I'm not equipped to begin to detail all the psychological things that made that happen and what is right and what is wrong. Like most Americans, I watched that and just thought, I don't care to understand that. All I know is that's evil and wrong, and that needs to be extinguished in our society. We need to put these people in jail, all of that stuff. I had all the same feelings that everybody else had. But there was this other part of me that also said, I recognize that trauma. And being on the other side, not that I was ever that bad. I was not even close to that bad. But I recognized that had I not fixed it, that the rage and anger would have continued to come out in ways that would have been wholly destructive. That's terrifying to me, but also a reminder, again, having listened to Simon and having listened to our conversation, how much work it is for white dudes like me who have gone through this stuff. It's part of the reason I moved back to Appalachia. It's part of the reason I'm going to be teaching writing classes to young teenagers, workshops, working through Write Pittsburgh, is because I understand that you have to first exorcise those demons in some way. They have to go somewhere so that you can begin to recognize that you need help and not just allow that anger and rage to fester in yourself. That is a heavy as fuck beginning to this program. For an interview that is going to be largely full of goofy laughing, even though we talk about some heavy stuff at the beginning. But it just seemed, I schedule these things sort of without thinking about what's happening in the world. I schedule them, based on some other things that I think are important to do in terms of presenting this stuff. But as I listened to this today while I had the impeachment hearings on mute and just watching, and I thought, well, shit, this could not be any more related to what's going on.